And the third thing that I want to mention, another tough lesson I learned, is that the importance of focusing. As a business owner, you get so excited and you go in different directions and you think, I want to do this, I want to do that, I can do this business, I can do that. If you dilute your focus too much, you're going to have trouble. You're going to have problems. And I made that mistake early in my career. Now, it's okay to diversify into different business investments, but the one that you're actually actively working in, you should be very focused. And the ones that other ones ancillary to what you're doing, you should make sure you have other people who are actually doing the day-to-day working in the business. And you're not the one that's also having to work in that business too. Otherwise, you're going to stretch yourself way too thin and probably get burned out.
So what is one uncomfortable truth entrepreneurs must accept if they want both purpose and profit?
You have to realize the uncomfortable truth is going to take you longer. It's going to be slow, but as long as you're relentless about continuing to grow each year in a responsible way while you're still developing the infrastructure and culture of your company in a sustainable way, you will get there. And one day you wake up and somebody will say, wow, I didn't realize how much you've grown, because it happens. It's almost like your kids, when relatives don't see them after years, they're like, wow, I can't believe how much you've grown. But it's been years. It's happened slowly, gradually. You've hardly noticed it.
Also, David, you say that debt is bad, but it is some of the most dangerous advice for business owners because they may not be able to manage without debt. So what is a mindset shift entrepreneurs must make about using debt as a growth engine?
They need to realize that there's a big difference in different types of debt. It's not generating any income. You're just paying that out of pocket. It's decreasing out-of-pocket costs. Whereas with good debt, choose to buy a good, profitable business, it's actually a money tree. It's almost the only way, in my opinion, you can almost like print your own money, because you're leveraging other people's money essentially to be able to pay down debt to buy an income-generating asset. And if it's a good business and a loan structured properly, you should be able to make that loan payment and then have excess cash flow after that. So it's generating cash.
So folks, you have tuned into TGV and hearty welcome to the Guiding Voice podcast series, the world's only quadrilingual podcast at this moment of recording, and we are trying to embark into multiple languages as we speak, and here we embark on transformative conversations for a better future, and we want to simplify and amplify your journey to success. I'm your host Navin Samala, dedicated to making the world a better place by bringing you wisdom through valuable discussions with experts designed to simplify and amplify your success. And thank you so much for tuning in. So, folks, welcome back to yet another episode on the Guiding Voice podcast series. And today we are joined by David Hampson. He's an award-winning entrepreneur and author of Rainbow Gold and multi-company business owner leading a premier aviation insurance firm. His work centers on building durable, people-first businesses that balance profitability with purpose. And he's known for debunking popular business myths, and he brings raw, real-world experience and refreshing candor to every conversation. And we are pleased to have him on our show today. So, David, hearty welcome to the Guiding Voice podcast series. How are you doing today?
Doing very well. Thanks, Naveen. Thanks so much for having me as well. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to speaking to your audience today.
Absolutely pleasure to have you. And folks, today we are going to dive into an interesting conversation on the topic at hand, the scale to sell lie. David Hampson on building a business that actually lasts. And before we get into our conversation, here is an exciting twist as always. Let us tickle our guest brain first. So, David, it's time for us to kick off the first rapid fire round, which is the rapid fire round of random words. I'm going to mention a few words, and I would love to hear the first thing that comes to your mind in response without thinking much. And if you're ready, let's get started.
All right.
All right. So, my first word is curiosity,
Essential.
invention,
Important.
future,
Infinite possibilities.
universe,
Ever expanding.
leadership.
Mentorship.
Wow. Success,
Possible.
aliens,
They exist out there somewhere.
Business,
Capitalism.
entrepreneurship.
So many opportunities.
Wonderful. Here comes the last one. Role model.
Grandparents.
Amazing. I loved all your responses and thank you for participating in rapid fire round number one. There is one more rapid fire round towards the end of the episode, so stay tuned. And David, thank you again. And thank you for being part of our journey in shaping the careers and lives of millions across the globe. Now it's time for us to cruise into the mainstream conversation. So, my first question to you is talk to us about who is your guiding voice?
My guiding voice is the voice that's internal inside me. It's been influenced by many different people in my life, and it continues to be influenced and shaped by my experiences and the people in my life. But at the end of the day, I always dig down deep and listen to my gut because I've learned that that helps me get over when I'm stuck and I'm kind of like stuck in almost like an analysis paralysis. If I listen to that inner voice, listen to that gut that's telling me, it usually guides me the right way.
Got it. Also, share your success mantra as in top three things that have contributed to your success so far.
Well, I think one of the three that I was actually it was instilled into me at a young age by my parents, and I believe it's something that was, something not necessarily born with was grit. A grit mindset, having that resilience, having that growth mindset, the realization that your situation isn't static. You're not stuck where you are, and you have the opportunity to grow. You have the opportunity to fail, learn from it, have that resilience, get back up again, and then grow from there. So that's one. It's very essential. Another one is having the courage to listen to that inner voice that I mentioned and pull the trigger and not get stuck. Being able to make a decision and move forward. That's another one. And the third one I would say is having supportive people in my life. My family has always been surrounding me, has always been very supportive. My parents and my wife, the support that they provided have been priceless. I mean, I don't think I could have done it without having supportive people around me. I think that's so important to have a community of people supporting you when you launch an entrepreneurship journey.
Absolutely, I concur. I think family support plays a critical role in terms of they have to understand our situation, and at times you'll not be able to spend enough time with them.
Mhm.
In fact, I can resonate with you very well on that. And David, talk to us about toughest lessons that you have learned in your entrepreneurial journey.
But there's many, many tough lessons I've learned, but I'll talk about a couple that have been, I think, really essential. One is that, and most of these are all ones I learned early in my business career when I started my first business venture in South Africa when I was living there. But the first one is it's really important to pay a premium for professional services. I made a couple mistakes when I was running a restaurant in Cape Town, South Africa, where I switched to an accounting firm that was a lot less money, and I thought it was a smart thing to do to save money, but they did a terrible job. They didn't file my returns on time. They didn't remit payment on time. Had a terrible time getting my returns done, and I went back to my older firm, hat in hand, realizing that it's worth it to pay a premium for professional services. That's important. Now, if you're buying a widget like a napkin or something that's just a commodity, then sure, you can look to save a few pennies here and there. But in professional services, don't cheap out. That's very important. A second important lesson that I learned is that business is a team sport. I'm a very independent person, and I tend to be, very driven and be able to do stuff on my own. I mean, when I was in school, my sports that I competed in was cross country and track, which is really an individual sport by and large. And so I've always been like, I can do it myself, but you need to have a team around you that can help you, and that entails having good advisors, particularly having good legal advice, having, good tax advice and accounting advice, mentors. Like, that's so important. You need that community around you. And the third thing that I want to mention, another tough lesson I learned, is that the importance of focusing. As a business owner, you get so excited and you go in different directions and you think, I want to do this, I want to do that, I can do this business, I can do that. If you dilute your focus too much, you're going to have trouble. You're going to have problems. And I made that mistake early in my career. Now, it's okay to diversify into different business investments, but the one that you're actually actively working in, you should be very focused. And the ones that other ones ancillary to what you're doing, you should make sure you have other people who are actually doing the day to day and working in the business. And you're not the one that's also having to work in that business too. Otherwise, you're going to stretch yourself way too thin and probably get burned out.
Thank you for sharing those. Also, David, everyone talks about building to exit, and that has become a fad these days. But you call it one of the most harmful modern business narratives. So, why is scale to sell destroying more companies than it is helping?
Well, it's because when the goal is just to scale to sell, oftentimes build something, you end up building something that looks good, but isn't real. It might look shiny and pretty and, a beautiful PowerPoint slides and you have, maybe you're driving growth really fast and lots of advertising, you're bringing in lots of business, but you're probably not developing infrastructure in the company. The bones of your company probably is pretty weak. Like you might not be developing people that are going to be there long term. You might not be focusing on your culture. You might not even be focusing on profitability. Really, you're just trying to grow fast, and you may be burning through cash. You may have a high cash burn, and you may be doing fancy parties and all these extensive things. You've also seen people that really successful, but all they're doing is burning cash that investors have given them, and it looks pretty, but it's not real. And unless you can get that exit, unless you find someone that's gonna pay to buy it from you because it looks so good, eventually you're gonna crash and burn. So it's really just your only hope is that someone will pay for it, and they'll be attracted to that shiny thing, but if they don't, it's gonna fail, and that's a big risk, and that's not something that's sustainable.
Got it. And you lead people first companies, right? So, what is one uncomfortable truth entrepreneurs must accept if they want both purpose and profit?
One uncomfortable truth is that in order to achieve that, it's gonna be a slower process to get there than the people that are just scaling up to exit. And you may see some of your competitors that appear to jump ahead of you because they're following a different approach, but it may not be sustainable. May not be around in a few years. I've seen that in many different businesses. We have my primary business, is aviation insurance agency, and I insure a lot of companies. And I saw some after the pandemic, private aviations really took a boost after the pandemic started because people didn't want to fly on airlines anymore. So, I saw a couple companies that rapidly scaled up as we have an opportunity here. We're going to just grow, 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 grow. But they didn't have strong fundamentals of their business. And you know what? They might have jumped ahead of some of the other folks, but they don't exist today anymore. So that you have to realize the uncomfortable truth is going to take you longer. It's going to be slow, but as long as you're relentless about continuing to grow each year in a responsible way while you're still developing the infrastructure and culture of your company in a sustainable way, you will get there. And one day you'll wake up and somebody will say, "Wow, I didn't realize how much you've grown." Because it happens. It's almost like your kids, when relatives don't see them after years, they're like, "Wow, I can't believe how much you've grown." But it's been years. It's happened slowly, gradually. You've hardly noticed it. But and that's happened to us. I mean, in our business, we started off with in our insurance agency with just one other employee when we started and got, initially. And, recently someone was speaking to me and they said, "Oh gosh, is it just a couple people in your company?" I said, "No, we have 25 people now." And so, and people don't realize that, but it's happened slowly, gradually. And before you know it, you'll have gained a substantial size. So you've got to be patient. You've got to realize you will get there, but it's not going to be quick. And you need to continue to stay focused, one year at a time, one quarter at a time on getting to your goals where you want to be.
Also, David, you say that debt is bad, but it is some of the most dangerous advice for business owners because they may not be able to manage without debt. So, what is a mindset shift entrepreneurs must make about using debt as a growth engine?
They need to realize that there's a big difference in different types of debt and realize that not all debt's created equal. So there's debt that basically is creating a liability, which is the debt that most consumers have. So if you buy a car or You buy a boat, or take a personal loan for something. Even your house, to some extent, although it is an asset that could go up in value, but it is an expense. It's not generating any income. You're just paying that out of pocket. It's decreasing your out of pocket costs. Whereas with good debt, what you choose to buy a good profitable business, it's actually a money tree. It's almost the only way, in my opinion, you can almost like print your own money, because you're leveraging other people's money essentially to be able to pay down debt to buy an income generating asset. And if it's a good business and the loan structured properly, you should be able to make that loan payment and then have excess cash flow after that. So it's generating cash. And if you'll indulge me in a moment, I'll share a quick example. This is an example actually from a recent, similar to recent acquisition we did with a business. So let's say, for example, you have a company that's generating $600,000 of revenue and you want to acquire that small business. And let's say it has a 40% profit margin. So let's say it's generating $240,000 of profit at the end. And let's say you pay $1.5 million for that business. Now, the bank's probably going to loan you 80% of the money, and you'll maybe have to pay 20%. So you pay $300,000 down payment, and the rest is financed. The finance cost on that, let's say, are $150,000 a year. So you're making $90,000 of profit after $90,000 of cash flow, I should say, after paying off the loan. So you've now got you've now got a 30%, essentially a 30% return, 31% return, cash on that $300,000 you put in. Let's say the other example, you say, you know what? I don't want it. I don't hate debt. I don't want any debt at all. And you had the cash and you pay the whole $1.5 million to acquire it. Then that $240,000 profit would only be about a 16% return on the 1.5 million that you put in as cash. You can see you've doubled your return on a cash basis by using debt, even if you did have the cash to put in. And that's very powerful, that sometimes people don't realize.
Also, I came across these 5 invisible ingredients of sustainable success, right? So, out of those, which ingredient are most entrepreneurs blindly missing?
Well, of the 5 ingredients I have, one that I think people overlook the most, because it's more subjective, is environment. And by environment, I mean having a positive culture in your company, with your employees, and your relationships with your vendors as well, and your customers, and purging toxicity. By that I mean, getting rid of toxic employees when they infiltrate your organization. Eventually, if are in business long enough, eventually going to have a bad apple and have someone toxic that has to be removed. And even toxic clients. Like, as you get further along your business journey, and this is sometimes hard to realize early on, not every client is a good client. There's some clients that have to be fired. Now, it's few and far between. I can count, I think, on one hand how many we've had to do that to, but they can cause a drastic drop in morale with not only yourself as the owner, but also your team, if you let those people proliferate in your organization. So having that positive environment is very essential, and I think that's oftentimes overlooked.
Okay, when it comes to the aviation, right? You say move fast and break things. That would get you grounded in aviation. So, what is the biggest leadership mistake the Silicon Valley mindset creates?
Well, what the biggest mistake they make or they create is that they focus solely on top line revenue. So they look at, how much can we grow this, in the next year and then 5 years, and they just totally top line growth focused. And that goes down to, not encouraging, giving people an incentive not to focus on developing other aspects of the company beyond just growth, in the sense of developing a good culture, developing a profitable business model, having people that are there for the long term, promoting people from within. And, I found that, the best way to get a loyal team of people is to provide people that are ambitious with opportunities to allow them to achieve their full potential. And that's really difficult to do if all you're doing is driving top line revenue. And that's the mistake, I think, because what happens is that if you have a company where you're just driving the top line revenue, unless you can get someone to buy you at the end at some point, you're eventually going to fail. I saw a pitch recently, actually. It was a pitch deck for a company was trying to raise money in the tech space with an insurance related product. It was a product for the insurance industry and technology, and they had very ambitious growth goals. They had a projection that they're going to go to $100 million in 5 years, but there was no profit showing there. Like even at 5 years, I think that they were hardly making any money. Now, would you rather have a company that has $5 million of revenue a year, it's making $1 million of profit? Or would you rather have a company that's making $100 million a year and not making any money? Maybe they're losing some money. I mean, at some point, I mean, maybe they'll get somebody that's excited by that top line number and will buy them out. And maybe the investors will then get the return that way. But if they don't, the results could be catastrophic. They may not exist. At some point, the cash is going to run out and they won't exist anymore. So you haven't really actually built a company. You built something you're hoping you're going to get someone else excited to buy. And that's not really a business, in my opinion.
Let's talk about burnout now. So, why are so many high performing founders secretly burned out while still appearing successful on the outside? And what is the early warning sign most people ignore about burnout?
So I think that so many founders are burned out because they haven't developed the infrastructure around them with people primarily that so that they're delegating where they need to delegate, and they're probably working too much in the business instead of working on the business. And that's a mindset shift. Took me a while to understand is that I was much more valuable working on the business than basically working in the business. And you need to be able to feel comfortable as a leader, letting go of certain things, realizing that even if someone doesn't do it exactly the way that you would, that's okay. You don't need to be the smartest person in the room either. You need to hire people that are better than you, they're smarter than you, that can do things. And that will help with that, avoiding that feeling of burnout that many entrepreneurs get when they feel like they're doing everything, especially in the early stages when you're a little bit smaller and don't have as many people yet. And I think the early warning signs are if you start to feel like you're in a prison, like the business is running you instead of you running the business. If you feel like you need a way out, you're looking for, the thought of an exit is appealing. You just need to feel like you get out of it. That's when I think that's the early warning sign that, what, something is unbalanced here. I need to think about, how I'm leading and if I'm really, you know, at, working at my best and utmost potential in the capacity that I'm at, or am I just burning myself out working as an employee in my business instead of working on the business?
Mhm. Got it. Okay, next, moving to the next question, do entrepreneurs really need business school, or is it becoming increasingly irrelevant nowadays? So, what do you think are the skills that matter more today in this dynamic
Yeah.
world?
Well, business school, I won't say business school doesn't ever have its place, but I think that, most business schools, at least from what I've seen, they tend to educate somebody to be a good corporate employee and you kind of set them up to work in, corporate in the corporate environment. And a lot of times what the people are taught, a good amount of it's not relevant for what you're practically going to experience as a business owner or founder entrepreneur when, you're going to go into a company. Initially, you're going to be the so-called chief cook and bottle washer, where you're going to be, doing all sorts of aspects of the business. You're not going to have an HR department. You're not going to have an accounting department. You're gonna have to fulfill a lot of different functions yourself. I don't think business school really teaches people to think in that way. And I think that, some of the um, academic topics you're taught, and I've seen this in some accounting courses that I've looked at the materials, is it not it's very far removed from what you can actually do. It may actually sometimes make it even harder for people to actually adapt to what it's actually like running a small business, when you first start out. And I've actually, counseled several people that had their MBA, and I don't have my MBA. I've never gone to business school, but I had to kind of guide them on like, this is what it's like a small business, and you've got to pivot, you've got to be flexible, so, but they had trouble because, they had a certain structured mindset that they had from business school of the way it was supposed to be, and it's very different from the corporate world. So I think that's why business school can sometimes be not so relevant. And rather than business school, not, you know, there are the important things you need to know. So rather than business school, there are some essential things as a business owner. If you don't go to business school, you do still need to seek out education. And then the areas that I have that I think are so important, and I have an acronym for it. It's called PRIME. Those are the 5 things. I've actually added one now since then. It's now 6, so it's now PRIMER, and I'll tell you what they are. The first one is passion. You've gotta have passion, that's important. That'll keep you going when things are hard. So find something you're passionate about and something that's also good business. Like, passion isn't enough by itself, but it's an important initial component. And then risk management's the other one. You need to develop a risk management mindset. That doesn't mean avoiding risk. In fact, it means embracing risk, but embracing risk that makes sense. And everyone has different levels of risk tolerance. It varies between individuals. It also varies between different stages of your life. But you need to think about what your risk tolerance is, and is the risk that you're engaging in, does it match your risk tolerance and does it make sense? And then how do you manage that risk so you have the best chance of success? That's the other part of that. Um, and then uh, is money sense. That refers to accounting principles, tax strategy, and sales. So important. And I've seen so many people that are very good experts in their field, but they don't really don't have a good sense of money and accounting and principles, and they sometimes will fail because they don't understand the money aspect of it. And then environment I've already talked about, that's next one in the primary acronym, and that's, of course, culture. As I mentioned, it was culture and having positive culture and positive environment. And the last one that I added just recently, um, is is R for resilience, and that's what I mentioned, what I learned early on in my life is having grit, having a growth mindset. You need to have that to be able to keep going, or to when you face failure, get up and brush yourself off and take what you learned to try again.
Got it. Also, you call this insurance the backbone of modern economies. So, what is one thing people don't realize about how insurance fuels entrepreneurship as well as innovation?
Well, insurance is so critical to our capitalist economy because if you think about business is risky, of course, and it's what you consider, the chance of losing your money in a business is what you consider a speculative risk. So you have a chance of gain where you could make a huge profit, make a huge return, or you have a chance of losing everything. So that alone is pretty risky. If you were to also bring in the risk of having people being able to sue you, if something went wrong, if your product failed, or if an employee got hurt, or any number of things, you got in an auto accident, driving with the business, any number of things that could cause a big lawsuit, or a property loss if like your building burned down and all your equipment was gone. If you had to take on that risk yourself, as well as a speculative risk I mentioned, it would become almost untenable to go into business. But by people pooling their money together, as a community, essentially, in a big pool of insurance money that's managed by insurance companies to be able to buy a product that will provide that capital to protect you, to defend you, and to pay a claim if the worst case scenario happens, that allows the risk of business to be possible and for people to be able to take on that risk, of the speculative risk without also worrying that they're going to lose everything else. So that's, a lot of people don't realize that, and no one likes to pay for insurance. Like, I get it. Like, I have a lot of insurance policies too, and no one no one likes to pay the premium, but I've seen, obviously, as an insurance professional, so many situations where people have been so thankful they've had that protection when the worst case scenarios happen. Fortunately, it doesn't happen that often. Many people go through their whole business career without ever having a serious claim. And, but when it does happen, it can be the difference between wiping you out totally and allowing you to continue running your business and continue to grow from there.
Mhm. Also, you went from a science student to a successful acquisition entrepreneur. So, what was the biggest mindset shift that made that possible?
Well, when I was in science and I was studying physiology and exercise physiology actually specifically. I did some scientific research. I thought I would be able to, make a difference by doing the research that I was doing in that field. But over time, I came to realize that, for one, he was going to be able to provide me with limited financial success over my life, but also, eh, I was actually, as I learned more about business, and I hadn't known a lot about business until I started studying it. But as I learned more about it, I realized that I could actually make a bigger difference and create a bigger legacy in my community and even in the world from my perspective with business than I could doing science in a very narrow field. It was yes, I could maybe, you know, research something new in a very specific area, but in business, you can touch so many different things. You can positively influence your local community. I mean, if a business comes out with a new product, that can be innovating potentially to the world. But even on a smaller scale, your local community, your employees, you can uplift the lives of your employees if you give them opportunities and you promote them. You're giving people jobs that provide that are affecting their entire family. With what we do in insurance, for example, we're positively influencing our customers and clients' lives by protecting them and making sure that they're protected when the worst case scenario happens. So there's just so many, and in mentorship too, once you get successful in business, you can then pay it back by mentoring other people so they can follow the same path, which is kind of what I'm hoping to do with the message in my book. So there's so many ways you can make a difference and feel like you've led a fulfilling life and create a legacy that I felt like it was that mindset shift was that I was able to make more of an influence and have a meaningful life in business than I could in science. That was that mindset shift.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think, yeah, definitely as a business owner, sphere of influence can also grow a lot. Amazing.
Absolutely.
And David, your book Rainbow Gold emphasizes making the business both the journey as well as the destination. So, what does that mean for someone who currently hates the day-to-day grind and just want to reach that particular destination fast?
So, I think if you feel like you're hating the day-to-day grind, then you're probably not in the right place because, you're either not in the right. I mean, it doesn't even necessarily mean you have to start a business, but, is the job really the right job for you? I mean, we spend, at least most of us spend at least 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, sometimes more working. And if it's just a grind, then, what are you doing? I mean, find something that, is fulfilling for you, even if it's not, even if we were still working for someone, but it still should be have personal fulfillment. And, I aim to have that with our employees. And I think we do a pretty good job with that, where they feel like they're doing something that's meaningful to them and they get satisfaction out of it. But, that's something I never wanted when I was younger. The thought of, I think that's why I went into science initially instead of, something else is that and didn't study like law or become a doctor. The thought was that, doing something that was going to feel like a grind and, just sort of having, almost feeling like, that movie Groundhog Day where it's like every day the same thing is happening. You're getting up, you're grinding through the day till it's 5 o'clock and you can clock out and go home. That just to me seems like that's such a depressing way to live. Life is too short. So if you're in the grind, look deep within yourself and ask yourself, is this where I want to be? Life is too short. Maybe I need to pivot and do something else. And that might be going into a business. That might be following your passions and your dreams and doing something for yourself and creating a legacy with the business. Or it might just be finding a different career and one that's going to give you, I think it's important to look for something that's going to give you financial success too, because, I do believe that money doesn't buy happiness. That's true. But I'll also say that it's a heck of a lot easier to to find happiness when you have money. So, so it is an important, it can be a good tool to seek financial success if you can find a way to do it, but even more so if you can find a way to do it while fulfilling yourself spiritually and personally. And that's the first prize. And if you're not there, try to think about how you can get there. That's my advice.
Right. Got it. Thank you for sharing that amazing advice. And we have had an incredible conversation so far, and it's time for us to add some more spice and some more excitement to the episode, which means we have come to the second rapid fire round. So, shall we get started?
All right. Do it.
Okay, comes the first bullet. If you could have one gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, what would it say?
It would say fulfill your potential.
Wow.
And it would say that because I believe that most people don't.
Hmm.
Most people have a lot more potential to do more with their life than they actually do. And, sometimes there's something holding them back. It may be their own insecurities. It may be some of the people that are negative around them. They may not have the support structure that I mentioned is so important. It may be any number of factors, may just be not having opportunity. I mean, that's, something that can also, not allow someone to achieve their potential. And, but if you can think about, deep within yourself, how can I do more? How can I achieve my potential? And if that message get through to people, I think it could be so powerful and throughout the world, really.
Got it. Can you describe yourself in just one word?
Underestimated.
And what is one piece of business advice that's extremely popular and extremely wrong?
There are a lot of things out there that could fall in that category, but, if I could just focus on one, I would say it's that, you have to you have to be able to give up equity in order to be successful in your business. That is one way you can grow and be successful, and I'm not saying that's not a good way, but you don't necessarily have to take on, venture capital, private equity partners to grow your business successfully. And that goes along with what I said before about using, good debt and using other people's money. There's normally two ways to grow and to make acquisitions. One is to give up equity and take on equity partners, and the other is to take on good debt with a business loan. And, sometimes if you're in an industry where you really have to grow fast, private equity or venture capital can be a very useful tool. So I'm not totally disparaging it, um, but it can change your business. It can change the culture. It could change the direction. You can lose control over time. So if you want to be able to uh, control your destiny, be the captain of the ship, and potentially create a legacy, that might not be the path you want to take. So that's my advice: is that to consider that's not the only way to grow your business by giving up equity.
One business myth you wish would disappear forever quickly.
The myth that you have to choose between doing good and making a lot of money. The two can coexist.
And good debt or bad debt? Which one have you used it the most?
Definitely good debt.
Aviation or entrepreneurship? Which has taught you more about life?
Definitely, it's been, I would say, entrepreneurship, because it's taught me so many things in so many different directions. Although aviation has taught me more about myself, but entrepreneurship has taught me about life.
God. One daily habit that keeps you grounded.
Exercise. I try to do some cardio exercise almost 7 days a week, and that really helps good stress relief.
One decision that changed your career.
Learning to fly, because that kind of directed me into a business that I have both passion about and I have a lot of knowledge and experience in.
One trait every entrepreneur must fire from themselves.
The fear of failure.
And it comes the last one. What is one electronic gadget or a fantasy gadget that you'd like to see or invent yourself?
A time machine.
All right, amazing responses. And thank you so much for participating in Rapid Fire Round number 2 as well. Let's flip back to the mainstream. So, if you could teach new entrepreneurs one principle today that ensures their business still exists in 20 years, what would it be?
My advice would be to try to maintain a profitability uh, level that's in the 75th percentile based on looking benchmarking against your peers. Because if you can maintain a profit level that's sort of best in class, whatever industry you're in, you're going to be able to be there for many, many years. Yes, continue to grow, but don't take your eyes off the profit, because having more money coming in than going out, that's the key to long-term success. Simple.
Got it. Amazing advice. And David, I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. And how is your experience being hosted on the Guiding Voice podcast?
It was great. You asked some wonderful questions to dig into some of the concepts that I talk about. And, I've enjoyed listening to some of your other podcast episodes. And I also congratulate you on all your success. You've done an amazing job building this podcast, and congratulations.
Thank you so much. And looking forward to hosting you again in future. And I wish your book a grand success. And looking forward to hosting you again in the near future. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Naveen. I look forward to it.
All right. So, friends, that was our episode with David Hampson. And before we get into the trivia section, here's a quick request. If you're listening to this episode on Spotify or Apple Podcast, request you to leave a rating and review so that we can amplify our reach And also, if you have enjoyed the conversation, please share with at least 3 of your friends or colleagues who would also like TGV. So spread the knowledge and help others grow just like you. Now it's time for us to cruise into the trivia segment. So having had amazing conversation about business, growth, entrepreneurship with David, I thought of presenting you few facts related to aviation as well as some related to business. So first one is a question like, did you know that over 70% of fastest growing small businesses use some form of debt? And they attribute scaling directly to it. Next is commercial aviation has one of the highest safety adherent systems in the world, inspiring leadership frameworks used by NASA and also other high stakes industries. Third fact is that over 60% of today's top entrepreneurs never attended business school, and many self report learning more from failure than formal education. Next fact is global economic data shows that entrepreneurship spikes when risk transfer systems like insurance. Because if these risk transfer systems strengthen, because people feel safer innovating. And the last one is that founder survey shows that 49% of entrepreneurs experience burnout before the 5-year mark, but only a small percentage talk about it publicly. So these are some facts related to small businesses, insurance, aviation, and so on. Likewise, if you are aware of any successful entrepreneur, do let me know about them. If you're watching this episode on YouTube, you can comment there. Or if you found it on audio platforms like Spotify, you can comment there as well. Or else you can reach out to us through social media. So, folks, that's it for today. Thank you so much for being part of our awesome TGV family. So, until next time, take care, stay inspired, and remember, the best is yet to come. Goodbye for now. See you all in the next episode with another amazing guest. Take care. Love you all. Bye bye.